About a month ago, I got a calling to create a podcast with, I think, some very, very important messages about how we can save some pain from our horses. In a weird way, they come here to teach us a lot. And because of our ego or unwilling to listen to them or to learn from them, we finding ourselves sending them into those kill pens pipeline or kill pens industry. And I think what I want to create with that work is to open up our ability to listen. And that's why I called it the path of listening, because I think listening is a very, very deep spiritual practice. And once we're going to go in that direction, we will have the way to learn from all of those amazing horses and all of their gifts. Today, I have with me in the first chapter Eileen McKusick. I hope I pronounce it right. She is an expert on biofield tuning work, and she wrote two amazing books: Tuning the Human Biofield, Healing with Vibrational Sound, and the other amazing book that she wrote, The Electric Body, Electric Health, Using Electromagnetism, which I highly, highly recommended those two after reading. I think the first question that I have regard to that what brought you to meet tuning fork? And how does it influences your life, first of all?
Well, I would say curiosity brought me to tuning forks and awakening to the fact that solidity is an illusion. It's an artifact of human perception, and that everything is waves, that we live in a field of waves and information. And if everything is vibration and information, then that's what I am. And so treating vibration with vibration just is illogical. And I read back in 96, I read a bunch of books on the use of color and sound and music in healing, vibrational healing. And then I got a set of tuning forks that was in a catalog. I got a catalog in the mail and it had tuning forks for healing in it. So I got them and I was doing massage therapy part time. And I just started playing with them. I just started experimenting with them and observing. And now it's 30 years later and I'm still experimenting with them and learning from them. It's what I found is that, we understand how ultrasound works and radar and sonar and lidar. You bounce sound off something and it comes back and it reveals invisible topography. And that's what I discovered in bouncing sound off the body and the atmosphere around the body. I discovered that there was a whole world sort of hidden in plain view of vibrational information. And that the tuning forks could find where that signal was in distortion because of wave interaction. And I found that if I just held the tuning fork in that area of distortion, that the body would use that input to correct itself. We're designed to heal ourselves, and our body makes use of whatever is in our environment in order to maintain homeostasis. And so we all know that music can be really moving, that music can be healing. We don't need a scientist to tell us that. We've all been moved by music. Tuning fork is an instrument and it moves us back into tune, into coherence, into order. And that is what the body is designed to do. The body is designed to heal itself. The body is designed to be in order, and the body is vibrational. So an orderly sound input helps the body to find its own orderly sound expression.
You said you keep research, and I want to ask what make you keep doing that? Because you did discover some stuff and you have your books and you have your knowledge and the people that you teach, but to stay in research, it's a different behavior.
Yeah. Because I keep learning. I keep discovering new things. Everybody that I work with is different. It's never gotten boring. And I have the kind of mind that gets bored easily. You know, if something isn't really intriguing and I'm not really getting something from it, I'll just move on to the next thing. And it continues to be teaching me and surprising me. And, you know, when I work with humans, like everybody is so different and everybody is so interesting. Like, I love my human family and I'm so curious about people and their stories and their gifts. Because what I've learned from this is that when we're in tune, we are amazing and gifted and brilliant and beautiful and great. And that when we're out of tune, we struggle to experience ourselves in that way. But I think everybody knows that they are brilliant and beautiful and gifted and amazing. The trouble is that the world has led us to not believe it. So it's a great gift to me to help to reflect people's beauty and greatness back to them in where they already know that that is the truth, right? And that's a great gift to be able to give people, to be like, I hear your soul. I see and feel how you're built and this is what it looks like. And people are like, "Oh my God, you know, I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm felt." And that's a real gift to be able to share, you know, that sort of reflection. But it's
Someone needs
also, go
to
ahead.
see it or to feel it
Yeah,
for
feel it.
you so you will be able to recognize that you are aware that it's inside. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love working with animals because I love that very clean connection that I have with them. There's a lot of satisfaction in helping beings out of pain, out of discomfort, out of distortion, and into a more relaxed, expanded place. I think as human beings, we're really wired to want to help each other. And there's so much satisfaction in truly helping. I wish I could help everybody. You know, I really do.
It's amazing your description as people wired like that because in a herd or if someone is suffering, they will share energetically the pain and they will dissolve it for each other. And as people, we are a little bit out of tune in that regard. So it's unique, the perspective. What allow you to develop your ability to listen? And how does you teach it to others? Because
Well, I think part of what developed my ability to listen and to really listen very deeply was living in a really quiet place. That when I mapped the biofield, I lived out in the mountains in the middle of nowhere, and there was no ambient noise. So I was in a space that enabled me to listen very deeply, like very deeply into deep nuance. So that was part of it. If I had been in a city or a noisy place, I wouldn't have been able to attune so deeply to the subtleties of the sound. So I think that that was part of it. I also am, you know, like you, very empathic, but I'm also very maybe a little have a little bit wider bandwidth of perception than most people. But that was actually really forged in trauma because I grew up as the youngest of six and I was always under attack. I never knew when somebody was going to come after me, you know, from some corner. And so I developed a kind of hyper vigilance of paying attention in order to stay safe, right? So there, you know, there were difficult pathways that opened up that perception. I'm also truly curious about people. Like, genuinely care and am curious and interested. And so that led me to just pay very close attention, from all of those things. When I first started teaching my very first group of students in 2010, I was teaching them to listen for the changes in sound. But what I discovered when I started teaching was that most people were actually kinesthetic and they could feel it before they could hear it. So I kind of had to change my style of teaching because more people couldn't hear the subtle changes like I could right away. And those people in time have learned to hear, but their first pathway was more what they felt because you feel it in your fingertips. I mean, when the tone changes, the vibration in your fingers changes. For people who are deeply empathic, they feel it in their body. They might get into an area where suddenly they feel pain where that other person is feeling pain through resonance, right? It's just resonance. It's
Yes.
not psychic, it's just a wave interaction and amplification. So some people really feel a lot in their bodies and in their fingertips, and other people are more auditory.
Wow. Amazing. You describe at your book tons of hours of self-work or self-development thing. And I want to ask, I don't know if after that, because it's a lifelong process, but what did you discover that is attune ideas and ideas that are not in tune regard to,
Well, that's interesting. Like ideas that are in tune versus not in tune. Now, I would say our entire cosmological story is not in tune. It's really in this realm, the light is hidden. And we were all in my education, we learned about solid, liquid, and gas. But we didn't learn about plasma and we didn't learn about ether. And these are the illuminated, connected states of matter. So in this mechanistic materialist realm, everything is separate. And divide and conquer is the order of the day. Even the English language and the words that we use, nouns, stuff, right? That gives this illusion of solidity and separation. And so discovering that there were illuminated, connected states of matter that we weren't taught about was very eye-opening. You read in Tuning the Human Biofield that like I have to retell the entire cosmological story in order for this practice to make sense.
so in a way, you are saying that the way of teaching it should be experiment or should be something that you are feeling or changing inside of you and not specifically language or knowledge, that even the language is keep us a part of the knowingness in a way?
Yeah, I think language and the paradigm, because our paradigm teaches us that this kind, subtle energy, like the magnetic field. I always say we know the body has electric current running through it. We know that anything that has an electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. And the human body is no different. But there has been such a campaign by the current medical system to invalidate the magnetic field of the body. Everyone is told that that's pseudoscience or that's, imaginary. And so there's been a very strong voice in the culture that says that energy medicine or chi or prana or subtle energy is all nonsense. And so that's a big barrier in sharing this work, is the way people have been programmed to think about this sort of thing.
I have a question on that. Like, if you have any, usually when you're trying to bring something new into the world, you are encountering resistance. If you have any science, anything that will kind of back up that ideas.
Well, we have some published research around the efficacy of it for anxiety. There is some published studies. Just it was just a small study, but it is published in peer review. Generally, what I do is I use logic. When I encounter someone who's skeptical, for example, like I have a friend who she's a massage therapist and she does Reiki, and her husband's a carpenter, and he very much, was feeling like this was all just ridiculous. And I said to him, do you agree that you have electricity in your body that's like beating your heart and your brain waves, and you have electricity in your body? And he's like, well, yeah. And then I said, well, you learned that anything that had electricity running through it had a magnetic field in school, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, why would your body be any different? And he said, well, that magnetic field would be really subtle. And I said, well, that's why they call it subtle energy. It doesn't mean that it's not there, right? And he couldn't argue with that. He just couldn't argue with it because it's simply a fact. Or I will say to people, have you ever been moved by music? Most people, without realizing it, are their own music therapists. That people will put on music to help them clean, or to help them focus, or to help them relax, or to maybe make them cry, right? Everybody understands the power of music, which is sound, to move you. And what we're doing is we're using, it's a strange song, but it's still using an instrument that is producing sound to move you, because we know sound moves us. We know sound moves us, right? So I will just appeal to logic, to systems we already understand, and make it so that it's very obvious to people. In addition, when somebody receives a session, they can be very skeptical, but then they hear the tones change. They feel energy move in their body. They get up and that pain that they were feeling is gone. So it's what we say in English, like the proof is in the pudding. That's fine to be a skeptic, but have the experience of it. And what do you hear? What do you feel? Right? Like, for example, I worked on someone who's a friend who was not a skeptic, but I was working within the Biofield model where we understand the timeline, right? So when I get into a distortion, I can look at the Biofield anatomy map and I can be like, okay, this is that. So I got into this area where all of a sudden the sound got so heavily distorted, like about as heavy as it can get into distortion. And he said, wow, what is that? And so I plotted it on the map and I said, this is something that happened to you when you were around 18. And he said, oh, that's when I went through the windshield of a car. Right? So he heard it. I got the age right. Like when you have that kind of experience, you hear your own electrical system making a noise like that, and then your practitioner can tell you what it was, right? That's the sort of thing that makes people go, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
What is, I have a follow-up question on that. What is the work that you do on yourself to stay in tuned? Like,
Well, I get tuning. I mean, I've actually had hundreds and hundreds of tunings at this point, maybe thousands. Like I've definitely received regular tuning. I get regular massage. I get regular sort of light touch chiropractic. If I start to go really out of balance, I get acupuncture. So I have a very, I also have learned how to stay regulated. Even when I'm really stressed, I have a lot of tools, sort of mental, emotional, energetic, to do my best to stay regulated. Because, like, when an engine runs hot and fast, it's going to break down over time. And there's so many people in the longevity and biohacking worlds that are after all of these supplements and devices and this and that. But the people who live to be very old are people who stay pretty calm inside, right? So the importance of maintaining coherence in your signal, maintaining regulation, staying grounded, having good self-awareness of your own emotions and signals from your body and what your body is telling you, right? That when we have a lot of noise in our signal from trauma, and I had a lot of trauma as a kid, and I had a lot of noise in my signal, it was really hard for me to regulate and to take care of myself and to know what my body needed. But now that I've had so much tuning and my signal to noise ratio is much better, that when my body is, needs something, I'm very attuned to it and very responsive. I'm not trying to force my body to do things that it doesn't want to do. And so many people override those signals and then become sick.
Wow. So there is a way when you says the ratio between noise and
Yeah,
that's amazing idea to think about. You spoke in the book about messages that you got.
yeah,
And a lot of people, when they get in tuned, they start to get those messages.
yeah.
The question is saying, let's say a close friend of you or someone starting to hear or to feel messages. What is the way to operate with it in the world in the way that is from one side still connected and the other still effective and
That's a really good question. Um, well, for me, the messages are always practical. They're practical and they're worldly and they're relevant to whatever I'm doing. So I, and there's always a tremendous amount of like kindness and patience in a true message, right? It's not urgent, it's not mean, it's not crazy. It's just clear and patient and um yeah. So it's not mystical to me so much as it is practical.
and you sat with it like for example you asking questions all of the time and then the message is coming or
No,
how
I think,
it's
well, I, you know, I graduated, I skipped 2 grades and I graduated from high school when I was 16. And I didn't go to college. I went to a college prep school where I was the only person in my class that didn't go to college. So right from that moment at 16, I made the decision to go my own way. And I started traveling by myself when I was 17. Um, I went to Europe for 8 months and backpacked. I went to Australia by myself and backpacked. I routinely put myself in positions where I had only myself to rely on at a young age. And so, because I was in situations that were potentially dangerous or unknown, like I had to really learn to trust my own inner guidance, my own gut sense. I had no one else to look to tell me what to do, or you know what I mean? So I think that and even as a kid, I've always been a rebel. I've always questioned what people told me. I've always had a really good like bullshit meter. I'm like, yeah, no,
no
doesn't ring true for me, right? And my mom always used to say, you can't tell that child anything. She's got to figure it out for herself, right? So I have just a nature of stepping back, widening the lens, questioning assumptions, questioning authority. And a lot of people, just aren't built that way. And so I think I trust my own intellect, my own logic, my own problem solving, my own feelings about things, like if something isn't right, I feel it. And so I think I have a high level of self-trust that most people, don't. And that is what has allowed me to kind of go so far afield into this whole new world, really.
Yes. But you described something amazing about the first of all, the practice to stay with your own system and not getting any help outside. And the other is the way to develop it. Like from hearing that, that's give me like I can create a model too.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And it's just really about paying really close attention because when there's something about the way the forks open up all these overtones and undertones that connect us into greater levels of perception. It makes our own antenna become bigger and more powerful. And the information drops in, the guidance comes. I mean, this is something that people discover. It's like you're standing there, you're not so sure what to do, and all of a sudden you'll be like, "Go get the 144 fork, right?" Or go to the body and put the like. It just comes, and I don't know where it comes from, but it comes, and it doesn't just come to me. It comes to anybody who's willing to sit with a quiet mind and pay attention. That's really all that it is. And the horses will teach you. The horses will tell you where to go, what to do, what they need, right? They just will. Your super consciousness will interact with the horse's intelligence and it will become clear what wants to happen.
You spoke about your bliss and a little bit about essences, but and a message to the world, but I'm asking what is the, let's say, what is your mission statement? Like you
Hmm.
came here for
I think it's
what?
very simple. It's sort of that bodhisattva pledge of helping to reduce unnecessary suffering. Like this is a world of contrast. It is a world of suffering. But the current medical model creates a lot of unnecessary suffering in people. I witnessed my father and my mother be damaged by surgery and drugs. I watched my two children become damaged by vaccines before I figured out what was going on. My husband was put on a painkiller that messed him up. The five people closest to me were all injured by the medical system, and I had to carry the brunt of all of that. I do not approve of the harm that they do to people. And if there's a way that I can save other people from suffering because of these drugs and unnecessary surgeries and useless counseling that right, like this approach to the biofield is more gentle, it's less invasive, it's more effective, it's more efficient. It helps to relax the mind, the body, put the spirit back in alignment, right? It truly helps people. I never would have gone on into the world waving tuning forks around and talking about energy fields if I hadn't seen so clearly how much it has the capacity to help. And so I care about every bit of suffering that doesn't need to happen matters to the people who are suffering. And the biofield model is just a much more elegant way to help people out of suffering. And so I would say that's why I do what I do, is because I care.
And I think everyone that will listen to that can feel it. Like it's not something that is, a lot of people can say they care, but I'm not sure how much people can show you they care or their frequency is showing their careness. There was a lot of gold that is hiding here between the words. Um, is any lessons that keep coming up while you treating people?
I think one of the things that I did recently was there is a fellow named uh, I think Richard Hawkins or David Hawkins wrote a book called Power versus Force. And in
David
that
R.
book,
Hawkins.
yeah, he created a map of consciousness. And that's a linear scale, a sort of a ladder with like Christ consciousness on the top and like the difficult human emotions on the bottom. And so I think the way that that has influenced culture is that it's led to this language of people trying to vibrate high or vibe higher, right? There's many people talk about raising their vibration. Okay. Technically, that's simply not true. Like a higher vibration is a faster vibration. That's really all that it is. It's just moving faster. And so this idea that like higher and faster is somehow better or more desirable than like lower. Like lower is bad and higher is good. And but really what I've learned from, almost 40 years of being on a healing journey and 30 years of being with sound is that we're not trying to vibe higher. Like when we heal, we don't ascend to the fifth dimension. We don't go into a lofty place and stay there up somewhere. We expand. We expand really in every direction. Up, out, down, we become more grounded. We become more regulated, coherent, present, able to be in a compassionate state instead of a reactive state, right? We become clearer, we become more in tune. And so I recently recreated that map. And what I did was I created it as a circle. And all of the difficult emotions are out in the outer ring, psychosis and depression and rage and, all of the really dysregulated emotions. And then as we move into the center, we move more towards compassion, kindness, presence, grace, wisdom, right? And then in the middle of the circle is enlightenment, that it's an inner place that we settle down into when our system is relaxed and regulated. That is the holy place. It's within, and we just need to relax down into it instead of ascend up into it, right? So I think that people don't want to accept that being human means being emotionally uncomfortable sometimes, and that it's okay. It's okay to drift out into these places. You're human. And you're going to have these moments where life gets your goat. We're not all saints, and that's okay. Nobody needs to be Christ all the time at all. And if you're out, in these outer edges, you just need to know that you kind of want to try to guide yourself back into center and breathe and become present and find something to help you to regulate, right? That we need to give ourselves the grace of being human instead of striving to get away from our humanity into some, you go there when you die. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, when you don't have a body, you don't have all these feelings, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. But as long as we're human, sometimes we have to surrender to the fact that we're human and that life can be very uncomfortable sometimes. And that's just the way it is. And that we don't want to shame ourselves for finding ourselves in these outer rings, because it happens to everybody. And it passes, everything passes, right? So in sharing that model, I shared it on social media. A lot of people were like, phew, what a relief. This is actually feels more true, and it gives me permission to be human instead of feeling like I need to be vibing high all the time. So I think that, yeah, that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And a human experience is pleasure and pain. It's comfort and discomfort. It's, love and loss. It's all of that. And obviously it's worth it. Otherwise we wouldn't be here.
It's amazing. It's even more accurate to his model. Like he said that you need to feel those emotions to raise up.
Yeah.
And and the way of making people feeling their emotion, he said map is something when you navigate to some place and you can go farther and go closer.
Right.
And when it's a linear thing, the distance creating gap that you not know what to do with it.
Right. Right. And then if you're up, then you're inevitably going to fall, you know? So
Yeah.
so there's this whole up down thing that instead of, it's like, oh, I'm kind of off center and I need to pull myself back to center. And I, as somebody who's a map maker, right? Because I've made many maps. I have the Biofield anatomy map. I've done the work that I do with Isaac Control Corin, where we've created a sonic anatomy map of 42 different sounds that resonate in the body. My most recent book that's coming out this later this year is called Stabilizing Statements, and I create a stabilizing statements map. So I'm like a mapper of consciousness and sound, right? And so it like recreating that map of consciousness. Just all of a sudden I was like, this is not an accurate map. Like I've been exploring this territory for 40 years. Like that map is not an accurate representation of the territory.
And in a way, the map is not a territory, it's a presupposition of the NLP.
Exactly.
The way using sound or using something that is, if there is something that is accurate about his work, like when he did the muscle test of everything, he trying to self-engineer growth or
Right.
expansion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he's great. Don't get me wrong. I read that book when
Yeah,
it came out years ago, and I think that it was of an incredible contribution to our collective understanding. But it's been decades since that book came out, and I didn't call I just called it an evolution of this map. It was like, this is how I see that I, as someone who's been on the ground in this territory, and as a woman, because women tend to be more kind of circular oriented anyway, that I can
yeah.
recreate this in a way that honors him, but is actually a more accurate reflection of what I see
More accurate and useful. Like
and useful.
the fact that I really like in your work regard to that, that it's useful.
Yeah.
It proved itself, it's useful, it's accurate, and 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 that I think it's a lot.
Yeah.
Super,
Things
super
need to be
thank you.
useful and make sense, right? That otherwise, what's the point? It's a waste of time.
Yeah. So super, super thanks for all of that useful knowledge. It was an amazing experience for me to be even in your field. I can feel it, like the amount of work that was done on your field. So it will be
Yeah.
that nice.
Nice. Well, I appreciate your thoughtful questions and reaching out and asking. And I'm happy, if you come up with more, like if you kind of reflect on this and you're like, oh, we can always set up another time too, because I'm in full support of you, you know, doing what you can to help too.